We'll start the meeting soon. I'd like to welcome everyone today. I'm President Garcia Morales, and I call this regular work session of May 1st, 2024 to order. The time is 4:04 p.m. I'd like to remind everybody to please silence their electronic devices. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the territorial homelands of the Nuwu, the Mawapa Band of Paiutes, and the Las Vegas Band of Paiutes. Trustee Bustamante Adams, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Excellent. Thank you very much. Trustee Guzman, are you ready to make the motion?
President Garcia Morales, I'd like to make the motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Trustee Guzman. Colleagues, thank you. Trustee Cavazos?
I'd like to second that motion, Madam President.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Guzman, a second by Trustee Cavazos. Please cast your vote. Trustee Williams?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, colleagues, that motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Okay. Going to move on to item 1.03, the approval of the minutes. This is an action item. If there's anyone who has not had a chance to complete their yellow public speaker card, please do so now. I don't believe we have anybody who signed up in advance or any yellow cards in this item, so we're looking for a motion, colleagues. Minutes. Trustee Cavazos?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes, item 1.03.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Bustamante Adams?
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Cavazos and a second by Trustee Bustamante Adams. Please cast your vote. Trustee Williams?
Aye.
Great, thank you very much, Trustee Williams. Thank you everyone. Colleagues, that motion passes 7-0. All right, colleagues, we are going to move on to item 2.01. That's the superintendent search process tentative timeline. You received a copy of it in the reference material, and there's a physical copy on your document, on your attached documents. I want to thank, before we go into this item, I just want to provide, given that since our last work session and meeting to discuss the superintendent search process, we have posted the RFP thanks to the work of the board office and CCSD board office and procurement. I'm grateful for that partnership, that work to move forward. The point of today's really, it's an informational item to provide you a very high-level overview of this tentative timeline. And the reason I say it's a high-level overview because there are several items that we have to be mindful of, not to discuss, simply because, for example, with the RFP, it is an active live document that is currently being, any information that we could provide here on the dais could be used against, could provide someone who's submitting a response to our request, could provide someone unfair advantage. So this is why we've are specifically waiting until, for example, the close of the RFP on May 9th to even discuss in the evening the RFP rubric. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Caruso, who's going to walk us through, again, the tentative timeline. And again, colleagues, very, very high level piece here, hoping to have the discussion stay at the high level so that we avoid any liabilities. Mr. Caruso?
Good afternoon, Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell. Joe Caruso for the record. So if we could direct our attention to reference item 2.01, it's up here on the screen. As Trustee Garcia Morales said, I'll do a high-level overview. Please note this is a tentative schedule, working copy, because we are still working. So we'll go through this, and then, of course, if there's any questions. So I appreciate the support working with Trustee Garcia Morales, Nicole Malich, Tom Grossman and Steve Staggs and Chris Blake in our purchasing department have been great to work with as well. So April 8th, we submitted the draft proposal to the purchasing department for review. Between April 8th and April 16th, we had a lot of conversation back and forth to make sure that we had what we needed, what they needed, and we were ready to post the RFP. On the 16th of April, we posted the RFP to Bonfire. That's the district site that they use to post active requests for proposals. So it was live at that moment. I then sent the board an email with a copy of what was posted online so that you were fully aware. I will tell you that we spent many hours going back through the last video, going through the minutes, making sure our notes matched, and I think we did a great job of capturing the feedback that was provided. So we had accurate information posted as requested. We're here today, board work session, to review the timeline. Again, it is tentative. As Trustee Garcia Morales said, the RFP will close on May 9th, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So we intentionally are holding on posting the draft rubric. It is a draft that purchasing has given us some guidance on. We will post that before the meeting on the 9th, and then we will have an opportunity, of course, to get your feedback as to what you actually want on the rubric. As we discussed in the last meeting, the criteria is posted in the RFP. So we cannot change the criteria at the meeting on the 9th. Because we told the students what we want them to study for, we need to honor that and actually make sure that we're quizzing them on that work. So we want to make sure we're consistent. So on the evening of the 9th, we'll have copies available for the public. We'll make sure that it's posted on board docs and of course have copies for you as well. From May 9th to May 10th, Purchasing Department's going to review the respondent proposals to ensure the minimum qualifications are met. Consistent with the request from the trustees, we will have a list of who met the qualifications and who didn't, so you can see both. There's also a financial component that they will provide their feedback on, and there's a rating scale that they also look at as well. We will then post that information by the close of business on May 10th, so that you have time to do your homework, May 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th, before we come back here and look at the responses on the 15th. So that should give you the weekend plus a couple business days. So if you flip over to the next page, let me scroll down here. There we go. May 15th, our special board meeting. We'll review the responsive proposals and rate the responses. Purchasing department, per the pleasure of the board, will then contact the finalists and invite them to present at a meeting on May 29th. So we have, that's our second special, actually our third special meeting, so we have a meeting on the 20th as well. And then also on the 15th, we will sit down and we'll need to develop some interview questions and or topics to be discussed by the finalists. So that's an opportunity for the board to say, these are some questions that we have based on what we've seen and we need some clarity for. So the interview questions itself will have to be consistent. So if we ask Group A, we need to ask and be consistent in how we, of course, look at our questioning and make sure that we follow really follow the script, which purchasing emphasized. And then on May 29th, we'll have the special board meeting. We'll use those questions developed on the 15th, interview the finalists, and then at the pleasure of the board, select a search firm. So that will take us to the end of the month. On June 13th, the purchasing award will come back for the board to formally vote on. And then from that point on, we did put on here a special board meeting on June 20th. But of course, that'll be depending on the time frame with the search firm, because obviously just hiring them, they'll need some time to, if they're local or not local, depending on where they're at, to prepare to come back and meet. And then we just put to be determined for interviews, selection, offer, and then of course, backwards planning from that November 1st date of the board's wish to actually have the start date. So with that said, Trustee Garcia Morales, that is a high-level overview.
Thank you for that high-level overview. Mr. Caruso, colleagues, do you have any questions at this time for Mr. Caruso that are high-level? That's like the key word for today. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. Thank you, Mr. Caruso, for doing this. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the detail. So when you were very, very articulate in saying that the rubric must reflect what we put out for the RFP, do you mean that when we ask questions, they must reflect the RFP? I just want to be clear. Or are you saying that when we score the people that apply, that we must keep with the RFP? I'm just curious because there were nuances that were stated during our board meeting. And I'm just wondering if those, I didn't see all of them. I noticed that you tried to capture all of them, but I didn't see all of them. And so I'm just wondering if they were left out because we can't ask those questions. I want to be clear, this is my first time. I just want to make sure that I'm doing it the right way.
Mr. Caruso, do you have any insight?
Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Trustee Guzman, to your question. Did clarify with Steve that if we didn't ask for something in the RFP, then we cannot add requirements to the initial evaluation. So that's the process from purchasing. So that's really where the rubric piece is. In regards to the interview, the trustees can come up with questions that they would like answered, and that's something that we can do on that 15th meeting in preparation for the 29th. So you'll see everything, you'll have your rubric, you'll evaluate it, and then if there's questions that you want to ask from that point on, that's where we'll design a separate document and have that as the actual interview questions for the 29th. So it's really kind of two different parts. Does that make sense?
That makes more sense, because even though we teach to evaluate, there are nuances in what we teach, and we want to make sure that we check for comprehension. So I got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. My question is also about the rubric. So sounds like we have to use the qualifications that we all agreed to when the RFP posted, and the rubric conversation is more about how we're going to weight those qualifications. You think that's a fair assessment? Okay. And my question is, are the applicants going to remain confidential until the rubric is decided by the board?
Mr. Caruso?
Okay. Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Trustee Brooks. Great question. So they are confidential until they are released. Purchasing keeps it confidential till all respondents are turned in at 1 p.m. They are not releasing any information to me, nor do I want to see it, until the 10th.
Okay.
And then once I receive it, it'll be sent to the board office so that it can be marked as reference material and then posted online.
Okay,
Yep.
but it's not going to be posted on the 9th when we're talking about the rubric. It'll be at a future point in time.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure that we're being very fair and transparent. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Caruso, I just wanted to clarify something I think that Trustee Brooks just touched on at the end of her question, and that was that because of not wanting to appear, with a conflict of interest or anything, reference materials for May 9th will not be posted, is that what you said, until right before the meeting? That's going to be for both trustees and the public.
Mr. Caruso?
Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Trustee Cavazos, that is correct. We are not posting the rubric until right before the meeting. We'll have copies available, and then we'll have it on board docs. And then, of course, the minute you get access to see it, the public will have access as well.
Thank you. The other question that I had at this time was, I know that this is still very high level, so I'm recognizing that, and it's a work in progress. It's I know movable, flexible, et cetera. Where's the community meetings on this? Where are we going to work those in? I don't see anything on community meetings or a time slot for that.
I can try to address that. It's this part of the process is specifically geared towards the selection of the search firm that will then help us select our engagement process with the community.
Okay, so, and I basically figured that was it. I just didn't know if this was going to be something that was still included in one of the timeframes. But we're basically just focusing in on the RFP and the search firm and what the timeframe is going to be on that. Okay, I think that's all that I have at this point.
Thank you. Trustee Guzman, do you mind if I go up to Trustee Williams before I? No. Yeah. Trustee Williams, do you have any questions at this time?
Thank you, Madam President. I don't have any questions. I appreciate Mr. Caruso getting all this together and presenting it to the board.
Thank you. All right. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you. I just want to clarify, so we are choosing, or we're setting up the rubric for the the team that's going to assist us with finding the superintendent, but the community meetings are for us to find the superintendent, right? It's not community meetings to find the company. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that, because to me, I mean, I would think that we would want the community involved in the superintendent criteria versus the company that we choose to help us find a superintendent.
Oh, you're absolutely correct, Trustee Guzman. It's, we first have to select the firm,
Yes.
and then the firm will help us inform our engagement with the community based off of our feedback.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to be sure because I misunderstood. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. So, looking at June 20th for the special board meeting, and this is about the community meetings. So just for, I guess, public knowledge, we will aim after June 20th to have the discussion of timeline for community meetings.
Could you, I'm sorry, I was looking for my glasses so that I could read. Could you restate your question for me?
Just wondering, just for public knowledge, we're probably talking about after June 20th, that special board meeting, to then have the discussion of a timeline for community meetings.
It's, that's accurate.
Okay.
It won't be exactly after June 20th, but it will be a timeline after, at some point after the 20th.
And that's when the discussions, I didn't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
That's
no,
when
you're
we
okay.
can have the discussions of the community input at that point.
With the search firm that we've
Yes.
selected.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Trustee Sparsa-Strophigan? All right, there you go.
Thank you. Joe, I always like it when we have context historically. So I'm looking at the current timeline, and that means that we potentially would be doing community listening tours with the community, potentially June, July, August. What was the past process? How much time did that process happen? The reason I'm asking is because it would be wonderful to have folks in school. Families usually are on vacations during sometimes the summer, often June and July, and that's just something I want us to kind of be very cognizant that if we want to engage with the community, to consider what is that extended amount of time for listening.
Mr. Caruso?
Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell, Trustee Esparza-Stoffergen, Joe Caruso for the record. So, great question. We actually, I think when we looked at the timeline, realized that summer, people have lives. People want to travel. People want to, including yourselves, hopefully take time off. So we know that there's many steps between hiring the firm on the 13th, in theory. The 20th, to Trustee Zamora's question, that was a date thinking that that would be something that we could get together, because they're going to have to meet with you to really sit down and say, okay, what do you want from us? That's a process. Then looking backwards, when we did this in 2018, there was time where they actually sat down and they had consultant planning meetings with the trustees and then had individual trustee conversations. So then there's that component. And then from that point on, they started working on a promotional flyer. They started looking at a job description, and then they came back to the board and said, here's what we're thinking. So there's many steps in between that time where they actually get to constituent and stakeholder meetings. So, and I'm looking backwards. I mean, there's a few weeks in between that process, and then they start advertising, and then they actually start doing the meetings itself. So Trustee Brooks and Trustee Cavazos will remember that it took time once, boots to the ground, so to say, and then they start actually working on it. So I think when August comes, hopefully we'll have a schedule, probably mid-July, we can advertise it, and then once school's back in session, August, here's the meetings, let families start attending.
Okay, thank you very much. Trustee Watson?
Thank you, Madam President. Trustee Zamara did ask my question, but let me just say for the reference guide 2.01, maybe we should put in there, as you have to be determined, candidate interview begins, that we also put in there to be determined community engagement as well, and stakeholders, because I know that we need educators, and I know that some are after June 20th, but I think we should also include that as well, and parental and student. So that's my suggestion.
Thank you for that. Trustee Cavazos?
Just a quick follow-up, Madam President, that the reason I had asked that question was because at the top of this item, and on the agenda item, superintendent search process tentative timeline. So there was a little bit of confusion as far as whether this was just the search firm or what this was going to include. So that was the reason that I started that train of thought and that thread. So thank you so much for clarifying that.
Thanks for that feedback. That's great. We can change the title to it being the superintendent RFP process and search firm, or a search firm process and search. Mr. Caruso, I think gets the picture, but just to clarify the title. Thank you for that. All right, colleagues, I don't see any other questions at this time. Thank you for that. I think we can move on. Mr. Caruso, thank you for your continued partnership and for helping us move this process expeditiously. All right, we're going to move on to item 2.02, speaking of community meetings. This item is not an action item. Again, it's simply a discussion item to provide you an update on the where we've left off since our last discussion regarding community meetings to help us establish our goals utilizing this support from the community and inquiry from the support of the community. I want to provide some context for members as we enter this exciting space today. First of all, you received an email from the board office regarding the number of meetings that we currently have planned in May. I know that's a pretty heavy load, and I'm grateful for everyone's partnership in making these meetings happen and for your attendance. So this is the month of May. We're entering summer, as we heard Mr. Caruso remind us that maybe we encourages us to care for ourselves and ensure that we take some vacation time, and then we enter July. And from what I hear, our colleagues on the dais sharing their desire to ensure that the school is back on before we engage in community meetings. And the one thing I'm gonna provide two pieces here is one that I believe that it's really critical for us to prioritize our search process. That it means perhaps our community meetings take a back seat while we plan and prepare and execute on some of these steps for the search process. So I'm asking for a little bit of a lot of grace, given that I was pretty forceful about moving the community engagement meetings at the beginning of the year, and I wanted those to take place this spring, but we have to really reprioritize our work. My thought process here is also was informed by some of our members' visits to the National Association of School Boards Conference, where I heard there was a workshop on superintendent search. And while we won't get into that specifically, I think there was some feedback that I received, and I'd love to be able to turn it over to Trustee Johnson, who shared specifically some of his insights and maybe some of his thoughts around the sequence of the search process and our community meetings that are separate, specifically related to our goals. Right there, just to be clear, there are two types of community meetings. There are the ones for the search process, and then there's the goal-oriented community meetings that we had started back in the spring. So, Trustee Johnson, are you able to jump in here? Thank you.
I am. It was fantastic to be able to go to New Orleans and be a part of the conference. It was great professional learning for me. One of the sessions that I got to sit in on was run by a firm that, well, not even a firm, an organization that works in the state of Michigan, and they specialize in superintendent searches in the state of Michigan. And Trustee Zamora and I specifically asked, in your experience, when you are still strategic planning while superintendent searching, what is the order of operations? And the gentleman said to us very plainly, it is best practice to put your superintendent search to be done first, and then second, you go through and then you do your community practice. And so the reason for that is twofold. One, you want to make sure that the community is very clear on what they are discussing at what point in time, because there's a chance for there to be conflation between we're searching for the superintendent, so we're giving you a bunch of information about that, and we want to tell you about the goals we want for the district. And so oftentimes, if you are doing two things concurrently, the discussions get, they are very hard to follow. And so because of that, you do the set of superintendent search meetings first, and then secondly, you do the community goal-setting meetings. The second part of that is to make sure that you are taking the tenor and tone of the community. The superintendent search is of the highest importance, and people think about that first, and that is the biggest thing that is on their mind when we're talking about the school board, given it's our single employee. And so we want to make sure that we are being responsive to the desires of the community and doing one thing first. And so by not trying to do two things at once, we're demonstrating that we're prioritizing the most important job that we have, which is to locate the most talented person for this role and then to support that person to do the best job. And so we do that by putting all of our energy and effort into that work. So that's what I gleaned from it. Trustee Zamora, if you found something different, or Trustee Guzman, if you heard something different while you were there, please share. But I think I copied everybody, at least the three of you, on that email when I asked again, just to clarify, and he shared again that was the process, that was the steps in the process that he'd seen that were most effective. Sorry for the long-windedness.
Thank you, Trustee Johnson. Appreciate your perspective. Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Trustee Johnson. That was a really good workshop we attended. I did hear, that was a question that I think Trustee Johnson and I asked about combining the two meetings, and that's something we as a board had discussed before. He suggested no, but yes, on separating, but my thoughts when I received the answer, it was more about, I feel like we can do both. I wouldn't like us to go into the community where we're at, the climate we're in right now with our community, and conversations about the superintendent search not be fruitful. So I believe that we can possibly do both. We just have to be really strategic about it. I think the conversations do for sure have to be separated. This is superintendent, this is, strategic planning, but I would not like to see us put a hold on it, because I know we've been telling the community in the past couple months that we're going to be doing this, and I would not want us to stop that process and then us kind of going back on our word in that way. I do understand your point of view that there's other things that are a priority. That is for sure a priority, finding a great superintendent, but I think we can do both, and with the team that we have.
Thank you for that insight, Trustee Zamora. One thing I know for sure, just where we are at right now, I think it is imperative for us to select a firm, and then with their consultation, I feel like I hear my colleagues saying that is the common thread, is that once we have a search firm, I think that we can, in partnership with them, determine if it is something that we move forward, if they recommend that we move forward with both of these at the same time, maybe not same meeting per se, so it's not a 2 or 3 hour long retreat, right, for our community. We use their time wisely, but we would benefit from putting a pin on this particular piece right now so that we can find the search firm, and then the search firm help us make a determination about the sequence and the timing of said meetings, potentially as early as August. Okay, Trustee Johnson, you back in the queue? Yes, okay, I see you, thank you.
Yeah, what I'm wondering is, I think communication always is the most important part anyway, and so I wonder if we were able, and I know I'm speaking out loud in the public, but my thought is, if even though we said this is what we planned on doing, and I wonder if we would be able to be just as trustworthy if we said, you know, this was our plan initially when when our superintendent was still here. And now that we've had a set of circumstances change, we actually are going to shift our own plan so that we can focus on something different. And I think that could easily build the same amount of trust if we're just very honest and very forthright to say, the reason why we are changing our plans is because our circumstances have changed, and we would like this is still important to us. We still want to do this, and we want to press pause so that we can do it with the full amount of zeal that it requires and deserves, versus splitting our attention in two places, and we might not be able to give it all of the attention that we'd like to if we were just doing this one thing. And again, personal opinion. So I just think we could still get the same amount of support if we were just very honest and plain with saying, yes, we're stopping. We know we said this previously. It's not like we're going back on the word because we don't want to do it. It's because we had to prioritize our time and recognize that we just can't do all things at all times. Or at least we can't do them all really well if we try to do more than one thing at one time.
Thank you, Trustee Johnson. Appreciate your perspective, too. I'm going to turn it over. I see a couple colleagues in the queue. Again, I see a couple of colleagues in the queue. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. I tend to agree with Trustee Johnson. I think the community recognizes that the priority for everybody, not just us, is who's going to be in charge of the district. In fact, we've heard the priority from the community say they actually want them to start before school starts. So we're already going to have a bit of disappointment for some people because there's no way we're going to be able to meet that timeline. I do agree. It always seems like you can do multiple things at a time because you can, but you have to keep in mind that it will get really muddy for the people who attend these meetings. And your feedback on both parts is going to be, it's going to be a lot less clear for people to figure out what the intent of the communication is that you're receiving. I do think that the community recognizes that this is the priority, and listening to the community about what they hope for and what they want to see in a superintendent is still listening. And I don't think that it's dishonest to let them know that this is the priority, and we should, as a board, do whatever we need to minimize things that steal our focus, because overwhelmingly, this is what the community thinks is a priority as well.
Thank you for your perspective, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. Okay, a few things here. So I think some clarification is needed because we didn't have any reference material on this, but, the agenda item does, state that it's next steps pursuant to the professional services agreement with the Council of Great City Schools. So just to clarify for the public, what community meetings, we're talking about here, these were the community meetings that basically were going to be part of working with the council, correct? And was going to be very goal-oriented, as opposed to the other community meetings that are going to be folded into the superintendent search process, correct?
You're correct in terms of the council's goal, the board's commitment to create meetings focused, allow us to clarify our board's goals.
Okay, so I want to touch briefly on what Trustee Zamora had brought up, and one of the things that we need to be aware of, and something that I was just notified about today, is that, with our lack of community meetings right now, and fully understand where everybody is coming from, like, we only have so many hours in the day, and, nobody's even mentioning graduations in the middle of May, along with all these other meetings. But touching on what Trustee Zamora had said, I know that on the east side tomorrow, there is a parent leading a second community meeting because they are stating that we're not having the community meetings. I have declined to attend these meetings. I have been invited to them, but I just want us to be aware that there are parts of the community that are taking things into their own hands and setting up their own meetings. So we need to be aware of that. And you know, in effect with what Trustee Zamora was saying, it is a priority for our community right now to select our superintendent. And so we can, we can reframe that as it's a goal. I mean, that is one of the goals that they want us to achieve, and they're looking at us to get that done in the most expeditious manner possible. So the last thing I wanted to ask is Trustee Johnson and Trustee Zamora also reminded me of something else that I did not have written down. And they came back from that conference and gave us the benefit of, their knowledge from those workshops. I was wondering, we never received any report on the workshop that Mr. Caruso and Trustee Brooks attended, affiliated with the Council of Great City Schools. So I was just wondering, with their expertise in attending that workshop, was there anything they could share with us having to do that would help us, with the superintendent process, with the community meetings? And are we going to get any kind of report from that workshop in the near future? And it could come from either one of them. I'm open to both of them.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos, for your curiosity. At this time, we're going to focus on we have colleagues in the queue still have questions, and I would appreciate your question, but I don't see how that specifically is aligned to, we haven't asked them to prepare, and let's not see how that's aligned to the discussion about pausing our community meetings in preparation for, in concert with our pausing or delaying or creating a discussion around this particular item with respect to our community meeting. So thank you for offering that and continue to be curious around that. However,
Okay, and it's not just to confirm, it's not just curiosity, it's actually clarification. And I think that it does align because, we're not talking about just pausing the meetings, we're talking about how things are going to be arranged. So I will accept that answer for right now. Perhaps I can just follow it up with an email, because I still am very curious about that workshop, and I think all of the trustees would like to receive a report on that. Thank you very much.
I'm so glad. And I don't believe that you speak for all trustees, so I'm going to just leave that there. And when you're ready to participate in that program, would love and gladly be able to support you with that participation. Trustee Satori?
Oh, yes. What I was just going to piggyback on was that my original thought was putting those meetings together, like we're in the community, let's go ahead and get all of that feedback. One, I do think the community will just, wants us in the community. So definitely being there for the superintendent search and getting that feedback, that is connecting with the community. So that is step one. But then after thinking about it too, I think it's valuable to then have that superintendent selected, because that will help guide those goals. We have the person to identify with. We know kind of where they come from and their vision as well. I just think it'll be kind of cleaner to have that person in mind once we're setting those goals. So.
Thank you for that feedback, Trustee Satori. Very good. Before I turn it over to Trustee Johnson, I want to make sure that I check in with Trustee Williams and see if there's anything that she'd like to add to this conversation at this time.
Thank you, Madam President. I think the only comment I really have is I just would like to caution the other board members that please understand that this is a really extensive process. And I don't think rushing into these processes sometimes does the district or the children that fall under it benefit. I also want to bear in mind that I love having community meetings. I think those are really important to gather input. But sometimes I think we forget that Las Vegas is a very transient city, and every 4 to 5 years we have a brand new set of new parents and new students and new community members. So while input is always needed and guarantees that we make a good decision, I also want people to understand that this is after grants and everything else like that, is a $4 billion industry. That we have to make sure that we're actually helping children and the community as it grows and expands, because the city is no doubt expanding and growing. So those are really my only comments. I don't have any questions other than those.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Johnson?
Trustee Cavazos, I really appreciate you sharing, the fact that the meetings are going to happen, and community members want to have these, and so they're very excited about being able to be able to engage in the process. And what it made me think then is, what is the way, and anybody can answer this, what's the way that we can proactively communicate what we're doing and why we're doing it and the timeline on which we're doing it, so that people don't think that we're kind of sitting on our hands, but instead they recognize, oh, well, this is going to happen first, and then they're doing this. So I just don't know what's the way that we use our voice to be able to tell people, here's what we're doing. I imagine people are watching now, but not everybody's watching. And there's only one person in the audience who, and I know she has a wide reach, but in all seriousness, like, what is the way that we can, the 11 of us, in some way let folks know, here's what's happening, so that people don't start to just think that nothing's happening, right? And I know, because if we don't say anything, then they'll formulate their own narrative, and then that's when the challenges start to happen. So the question is, what's the way that we can proactively communicate what we're doing and the plan that we have to do it, so that everyone is on the same page, us and our community members alike?
I think that's a really good question, and it's generating a little bit of enthusiasm, which is great for discussion purposes. And that's exactly the type of question that we can be asking ourselves as we prepare to select and finalize our firm, and then ask them specifically to help us, guide us with some of these pieces too. So all that to say is, like, yes, that is the type of question that we can ensure that we're prepared to respond to and engage proactively in our communication efforts. So supportive of that concept. I see Trustee Zamora has some feedback for that particular question, but Trustee Esparza-Strophigan hasn't added to this conversation yet. Is it okay if I go to her first? Thank you. Go ahead.
Excuse me. Excuse me, I apologize. Allergies have not been kind to me lately. But anyways, so a lot of really thought-provoking conversation about that. Here's the thing that I just want to remind us all what an opportunity it is going to be for us to rebuild trust again, to really engage our community, because they're actually having their own meetings as we're speaking today. They're already having conversations. And so I think we cannot think in a singular mindset that when we have community meetings in the future looking for the superintendent, they're going to definitely be sharing. So I just want us to be cognizant, and yes, I see all the points that have been laid, but I want to concur with Trustee Johnson's comments about, we want to use this as an opportunity to do a new way of being transparent and really communicating all of the process. So is there a possibility to have also things done in a way that it's on the online platform in addition to not just in person? And I'm just thinking about, I've had several requests from rural community members to participate. So I think, I'm encouraged by their invitations, but I know that we cannot participate because we are only one individual. I just want us to think differently about how we're going to do that messaging.
Thank you, Trustee Esparza-Strophigan, and those are great suggestions, and definitely something for us to hold on to as we plan out our meetings. Trustee Zamora.
Thank you, Madam President. I feel like Trustee Johnson and I were on the same wavelength, because that's exactly what I wanted to mention. I think having that communication with the community is really, really important, especially because they are having their own meetings. They are creating their own narratives. And we're trying, I think as a board, you've mentioned before, President, that we want to work on that. We want to build those relationships. I would love to see in this discussion coming up with maybe some ideas of how, not really a compromise, but more of kind of a plan. If we pause these meetings, we focus on the superintendent search and having the community meetings for that. What we can do for now, though, as just a strategy. So then when it is time to have these conversations, we have that relationship with the community. They will be, accepting. We will be accepting. It's just very open.
Thank you, Trustee Zamora. also failed to mention at the very beginning, what you just shared reminded me that I appreciate that several members at the last meeting, at this time, this agenda item was brought up, that there's interest in volunteering and supporting that building of that strategy. And I want to share with you that just to ensure that we are complying with open meeting laws and are able to engage in a transparent manner, I will be reaching out to members individually to ask them for specific assignments. For example, I know Trustee Zamora and I, we're working on identifying areas of our community where we could potentially meet. So I know that that's happening, and I hope to be able to reach out to colleagues with specific tasks so that there's opportunity for everyone to be engaged in that capacity. And so that's the kind of work that I'm committed to, supporting the board and leading this work. Trustee Sparks-Strofican mentioned some virtual options and some hybrid options. So I'd love to be able to speak to her about that kind of framing and setup so that when we are ready to launch, we can say, hey, based off of some of the discussions that we've had, these are strategies that everyone has suggested, and then tweak them on the board when we're ready to hit the ground running.
As a follow-up, so can we expect maybe from the next work session a better idea of a plan for the board members and the community, just kind of the communication to the community about it?
Forgive me, I'm saying these up. I'm having a conversation with myself. But there will be a future meeting. I'm not sure if it will be the next work session, but there will be a future meeting where we'll have these, a better picture that we can build towards. And again, going back to my original thought that we need to ensure that our search firm is selected and that they have give us some insight, once we have a better timeline about their selection and then what kind of community engagement sessions they have, I feel like we will be able to put these pieces into motion. So Trustee Zamora, I hear you loud and clear. Let's have a meeting in the future, an agenda of some sort, once we collect some additional information. Sorry.
And just to put it, just as clarification, as of right now, the next action steps would be, you would be reaching out to board members to kind of just come up with the plan.
Yes, correct.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Brooks?
Thanks, Madam President. I want to build off Trustee Johnson's idea. I think one tangible action we can do is similar to what Washoe County did. They have a page on their website specifically outlining the superintendent process. It has links to like the RFP and basically everything that you would need to know. I think that could be a good central place to direct people. I understand that there's absolutely no way that you are going to prevent people from having these meetings. They have a right to have the meetings. The only thing you can do as a board member is make sure that you're being fair and transparent and you're removing bias from your own process by making sure that you're working within the bounds the board determined. But definitely, if there's a central location on our website, it's very easy to reply and say, hey, this is where we are in the process. We invite you to be part of it. That's the entire purpose of having this be a transparent process in public, is because we do want those people in the fold, but we're not going to be able to prevent them from jumping the gun and trying to get ahead of it. Like it's unavoidable, and it's not fair for us as and I think that's one thing that they don't understand. It's not fair for us to show up in a setting that the rest of the board did not agree to. They did not agree to actually hear things in this format. So we have to stick to the plan, but we have to have resources available to let them know what the plan is.
Thank you. I hear some audibles from our colleagues that they are supportive of a site, a location where we can start to build some of those elements and have a central location when individuals ask us about the search process. We can provide that link to them. Perfect. Thank you, colleagues. So action item, well, not really action, just additional steps that will take place here when it comes to community meetings. Thank you for your understanding and your support in helping us move this work forward. Thank you. All right, I'm going to move on to item 2.03. This is not an action item, again, a discussion only. This is a discussion regarding the service provided under NRS 252.110. And I'm going to read this to you as in preparation for the next item 2.04. Okay? And provide additional context. My intention with item 2.03 is specifically to provide context regarding how our board attorney has come to the board, and then a little bit of background and history regarding in 2001 specifically when this almost changed for us, and some of the decisions the board in 2021 made to keep the attorney. Okay, so NRS 252.110, except with the respect to matters for which the board and board of trustees of the school district has employed private counsel, draw all legal papers, give his or her written opinion when required on matters relating to the duties of the board of trustees, and transact the legal business of the school district, whose boundaries are contemporaneous with the boundaries of his or her county, and perform such other legal duties as may be required of him or her by the board of trustees. So this NRS 252 essentially grants the board of trustees legal counsel provided by the Clark County specifically, not Clark County School District, but Clark County, the government entity. And in 2020, so this item is codified into law. In 2021, we heard from council at that time that the county was considering making changes to NRS 252, or submitting a BDR to make changes to NRS 252.110. So that council prepared us to start a process and potentially begin hearing, prepare a process so that we wouldn't be left without counsel. In February, we had a meeting in February 2021 where this council provided us this guidance, and then the board specifically directed the council to research law firms that could potentially give us some proposals for service to the board. And there were several meetings that took place in May 2021, June 2021, July 7th, 2021, and eventually August 4th, 2021. During the August 4th, 2021 meeting, at that point, the legislature had closed, the session had ended, and the county remained with NRS 252.110. And at that time, the board went as far as receiving proposals and almost preparing for interviews with search firms, preparing for interviews with the potential law firms that had submitted interest in supporting us. The board received quotes that ranged from $3,500 for 0 to 10 hours a month to a retainer fee of $26,000 a month. So there was a range there. In August of 2021, the board agreed to keep the county's board counsel, and some of those items that came up for discussion were, while NRS was still allowed us to have a representative from the county serve as board counsel, the board chose that path to continue to keep that path because specifically there was two major challenges. One was the cost of the attorney, and because at this time we currently do not compensate the county for, we compensate $0 actually to the county for our board counsel, and because of the amount of work that the board counsel currently does has in the past been heavy, and I'll share an example of this. In the last 7 days alone, our board attorney has been a part of 22 email subjects, not including back and forth responses where she also provided legal advice, in addition to, for example, like filing our response to the recent lawsuit from the cities. And again, that is, that alone, the legal response would have, attorneys outside of board counsel would have charged us for every second, every minute of that. Again, because of the amount of time that our attorney was involved and continues to be involved with the board and the risk of increasing the budget from $0 to up to $26,000 a month for a retainer, the board decided to graciously accept the support of the county through this council. So again, this is an informational item, simply an effort to provide context about this discussion that took place in 2021 from February to August. The other thing that took place in addition to the discussion was because the board already had a list of firms that were interested in serving us in one capacity or another, and the discussions varied from the fees that they would provide us. Some said we give you 0 to 10 hours a month. Some said, you know, unlimited services. We were also still very, these groups decided to continue to serve on the list or stay on a list in the event the board needed external counsel. And we have that list. We would just need to go back to that list to ask those firms if what their fees would be. And I share that with you just simply as information that has existed for us. And if you were here in 2021, remember those 4 law firms. Okay. All right. There's no action on this item. Again, just simply informational, and happy to answer any questions that my colleagues may have about 2021. Back in time. Okay, all right. Trustee Cavazos.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to ask, and I was listening carefully to the, the review of the information, the correct information that you were giving us, but it seemed to me that the background information that you were giving us, it was not only informational, but it seemed to apply more to Trustee Guzman's board council request for proposal instead of just the informational on NRS. So I just wanted to kind of make that point. And I know that these 2 items are they're kind of hard to separate. And we were, puzzled. I know I did ask you, and you did respond. Thank you for that. I did ask, what was the purpose of 2.03, and you said that you would provide that on the dais, which you have. But I'm just thinking that some of that conversation and some of that information that you just provided, we can actually use that in the next item. It's going to be very helpful in the next item. So I just wanted to make that point, not really a question.
Trustee Guzman.
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. I actually appreciated that timeline because I also had that timeline in my notes. So I appreciate you doing that, and I look forward to presenting on the next item. But on this item, it specifically references NRS 252.110, and I just want folks to know that number 4 in that law says, except with respect to matters for which the Board of Trustees of the school district has employed private counsel. So we can employ private counsel to assist in our with our attorney. So that is the only thing that I would add. Thank you.
All right, thank you. If there are no other questions, I think we're ready. We can move on to item 2.04. No other questions? Okay. I think Trustee Guzman, you're in the queue to go up to 2.04. Okay, great, perfect. I want to just share, colleagues, taking this as a learning opportunity. Our board policy allows members who have a specific interest in bringing an item to the board to request that of the president. There is In this case, Trustee Guzman, Trustee Zamora, and Trustee Cavazos specifically asked for 2.04 to come before the board. I'm grateful to have worked with Trustee Guzman on this item and specifically the wording of this language. I want to provide some parameters for this conversation. We will benefit tremendously from sticking to the agenda item 2.024, which is the request for a proposal to seek potential counsel to work with and represent the Board of Trustees. This item does not allow us to speak to our current counsel's character or competency. And again, this is only about the RFP for board counsel. And I also want to apologize, Trustee Guzman. Last night you sent Google Drive with over 20 documents to be included as reference material for this item. I know that we were involved in a back and forth this morning, and I apologize I did not get to your response. But I did take a moment to notice, I'm not sure if you still want to include these particular items as reference material, because we can still include them. Although I think I needed some clarification in terms of how the where you notice the attendance of board counsel specifically on this item, because the minutes do not reflect anyone's attendance outside of the Board of Trustees. It does not include anybody. It does not include council's attendance reflected on these minutes. So I don't want to misrepresent these minutes to be included. If you have other material that indicates what you're trying to convey, I think it may be important to include that separately or provide that on the dais here to our colleagues so they have access to it. Thank you. All right, Trustee Guzman, turning it over to you.
Thank you. So first off, I appreciate having this agenda item, and I also appreciate conversation about it, because I haven't had conversation with Trustee Zamora or Trustee Cavazos about it. I do know that they have the same thought process as I do, but I deliberately didn't have that. Because I just wanted to bring it forward, and they did let me know that they also were bringing it forward. So here's the thing. This is absolutely not derogatory against our council. The reason why I want to go for a request for proposal is based on the fact that that the rules governing a county appointed attorney does not always meet our expectations. And one of the things is that I have been informed that the legal counsel determines when they need to attend a board meeting. And the thing is, I get that. The board attorney is not elected, and so they do get to determine when they attend. When going through the minutes for the last couple years, actually they do take attendance on the minutes. They'll let you know if a board member has attended via telephone, or anybody who has attended via telephone or who is sitting on the dais. And I noticed that we had quite a few board meetings that we didn't have an attorney, and I felt that it would be really good for us to have a backup in case the attorney cannot attend. And that way, we are making educated decisions on the dais, and if we need to ask the attorney for information that comes forward, we can ask them. But if our attorney is not here, we cannot ask. And so therefore, our determination is based on what we think it may not be the best thing to move forward. And so that is the reason why I wanted to bring it forward. And I feel a new RFP would be good, because the law firms that we had in the past may not want to assist with us coming up. They may have also moved on. I mean, it was 2021. We are in 2024. And so that is the reason why I asked for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Guzman. To be clear, from the list of 18 board meetings in 2023 that you attached to the folder, only 2 of those our council was not present. So I think it may be important to clarify that for the record, that in the folder that you shared, there were 2023. But the council was not our council in 2021.
Right.
Right. So current council in 2023, out of 18 meetings, was unable to attend physically in person in 2. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to colleagues who are in the queue. Trustee Guzman, I think that you mentioned, are you on the queue or off the queue?
I accidentally hit
Okay,
myself off
you're,
the queue in case somebody wanted to ask me a question.
you're good. Okay, I'll be ready to make sure to turn it on. Let's leave it there. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. Okay, question. What prevents the board from asking the general counsel in those 2 instances where the board counsel wasn't available? What prevents the board from utilizing general counsel to answer questions?
This is a question for Trustee Guzman or for me or for?
Trustee Guzman, who's
Okay,
making
forgive
this
me. Thank you.
request.
Trustee Guzman?
So in my opinion, general counsel represents the district and not the board. And I feel that we should have an attorney that represents the board.
Okay, this is where I'm struggling because the board is the district, like we're not 2 different people. The counsel that's provided through the board is specific to your obligations as an elected official or the board's obligation under open meeting law. So when you envision another entity coming to give us advice, is that what you are limiting their scope on?
Yeah, I mean, we could, it could, I am, in my thought process, when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about open meeting law, I'm thinking about decision-making that we do on the dais, even having a background in Robert's Rules of Order.
That's, okay, some of that's like our decision-making. Legal counsel should not be weighing in on like our decision-making. The only thing that they should be providing us guidance on is ethics and open meeting law. So I guess that's where I'm struggling, is that this request for an outside person, it's really not necessary, because if you had an ethical concern, I don't know why you wouldn't be able to ask general counsel, who also has to have a very thorough understanding of ethics and also open meeting law. We're not like a small district where we don't have a slew of lawyers available to answer questions. And I don't think it's a reasonable expectation to pay someone. The average attorney in Nevada is $300. So I don't think it's a reasonable expectation to pay someone $300 to sit here just in case, when there's another person available that can answer our questions. So is there like something more that I'm missing, I guess?
Go ahead, Trustee Guzman.
So, and I don't want to block out Trustee Cavazos and Trustee Zamora. I don't want to, but I do want to say that when it comes to ethical matters, there was an ethics documentation that was turned in by trustees against a trustee, and the trustee had to go to outside counsel and not utilize board counsel, which is something that if there were an outside attorney that the trustee could have. Now, the ethics thing was dropped. It was not a big deal. But the thing is that there should have been someone for a trustee to go to have that conversation.
I just want to step in. On the note of ethics, no, even if the board paid for an attorney, you could not utilize that for your personal ethical complaint.
But it wasn't personal. It was
I'm not
about-
saying you, I'm saying
Yeah.
for a ethical complaint.
Right,
The-
'cause
the
if-
board's attorney couldn't do that. That would be a conflict.
Right, even if it's a contracted one, it's a conflict because that outside person, they represent the board, not you. So it's still, you would still need an outside person to do that for you. So does that change your perspective any, or,
Not really, no.
okay.
Okay, Trustee Brooks, I'm going to put you back in the queue.
Understandable.
If you want to keep asking questions. I want to provide, if it's okay, Trustee, I think see Trustee Cavazos in the queue. I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to, first of all, before I go on to my question, just to clarify that, I thought that Trustee Guzman explained her intent very well. I want to see if I got that right and just kind of do my therapist thing and reflect back to you that it was not your intent with this item that you are saying to replace our present board counsel. You are saying that with our specific needs, that you feel that it would be beneficial to have backup outside counsel available to us.
That's correct.
Okay. So this is something that has, I just want to make sure that your intent was not that we were going to go back to just continuing with those three firms from 2021, but this was new.
That's correct.
Okay. So I would have to agree with Trustee Guzman, not surprisingly, since I was one of the three trustees that also requested this. And I feel that I have to share in all transparency that when I was first appointed to the board in 2017, in one of my trainings, it was made quite clear to me that there was a difference between general counsel that represents the superintendent and the district, and school board counsel that represents the board, not as a private attorney for our own, as Trustee Brooks correctly pointed out, not as a private attorney for us to use at will, but that it was to protect the board's interests. And Trustee Brooks is also correct that there have been a few times that General Counsel, Mr. Pushnik, kindly was here at just about every single meeting. I don't know if I can ever recall that he wasn't here. And that, that when our board counsel was not here, he did step in and he did answer our questions as best he could. I would not want to be able to quote a specific meeting, but I do remember a couple of occasions where he tried his best to answer, but then he deferred and said, I would need to confer with your board counsel on this, because he was general counsel. So I just wanted to make that point, that there is a difference between school board counsel and general counsel. I'm going to allow other people to jump into the queue.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Johnson?
Yeah, I'll just say, I don't necessarily have a, I'm fine if we decide to do an RFP, right? Like, it never hurts to search and look. But I do practically, what is our budget? What is the budget that we would have to be able to hire this additional attorney? Well, I appreciate the average attorney is $300. I don't want an average attorney, I'd like an above average attorney. So what's the budget? And then where does that money come from? Like, what line item? Because if it's zero today, that means we hadn't budgeted for it previously. And so that means that money's coming from someplace. Where will we have to take it from in order to pay for this? That'd be the first question. And then the last part of it is just in thinking about in the 5 months that we've been here, right, like we don't generally move at a breakneck pace. And so what I'm saying is, if there's a question that cannot be answered because our attorney is not here, and it sounds like she was here at 89% of the meetings, but like, if our counsel is not here, what's to stop us from just saying, well, we'll have to pause and put a pin in that until we can be there for the next one? I've not seen us have any questions that are so pressing that they cannot wait until the next meeting. And so if that's the one thing that we're trying to solve for, I just haven't experienced yet that we've had an issue that is so pressing that we can't get it resolved at the next time we meet. And so maybe we can just think about that. But then also, where's the money come from to pay for the extra attorney? And it's fine if we have like a slush fund, and then that's the answer, and that's the way we pay for it. But again, I'm also like, okay with just saying like, it's okay to look around and say, it can't hurt to at least see what options are available, right? I guess that's just that. So those are my two questions. One's a question, the other one's just a point. The question is, where's the money come from? The other point is, do we move fast enough that we can't pause when we have a question and have it asked at a different point in time?
Thank you, Trustee Johnson. I will speak to the item related to budget. It will come out of the district funds, some sort of general operating funds that are typically used for to operate the district. Something will have to go away. Yeah, go away or be condensed or replaced so that we can utilize these resources for any type of attorney needs. And with respect to slow and pausing, there hasn't been, from what I understand in the last year, even the last 3 years, almost 4 years that I've served on this board, that the board has had to, like, we haven't had a ground break, like an issue where we haven't been able to pause and complete our, we haven't been in that situation before. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, Trustee Zamora?
Thank you, Madam President. I do want to mention that during my training as well, it was mentioned that General Counsel and our Board Counsel were two different, departments? Entities, there you go, entities, and we couldn't kind of go to General either. I'm curious to see what that would look like too if General Counsel is not sitting anymore on the dais with our new changes. I do have concerns with, I like to pre-plan. I always like to be prepared. And I hear what you're saying, Trustee Johnson, if we pause things, put a pin on it. But sometimes there's conversations that are happening. And if something was to happen and, our board counsel now cannot attend over the phone, I've been over the phone a few times and it's very difficult to, follow along. I know there was a time in a past board meeting where counsel was on the phone and there was a lot of conversation happening on the dais and there needed to be kind of some type of kind of bringing everyone together to clarify some things, and it was very difficult for our council to listen and hear every person's point of what they were trying to say. So I just want to prepare in case they're not here. We are always prepared and have that backup. If there is, now that we're in a time with, our appointed members, and there's some things that we still don't know. We don't know what's, the law. We don't know any of that. This is all new to us. I would like to see someone present physically here if questions arise and we're all prepared and have the great, guidance for those situations that might happen. They haven't happened yet so much, but I want to be prepared.
Okay, thank you for that, Trustee Zamora. I will simply add that that leaves me curious with other questions around what additional training and support members need to be crystal clear on any and all situations specifically related to policy, so that they're prepared in advance of that they need this particular knowledge. So that leaves me curious. But I won't discuss that at this time. Trustee Sparsa-Strophagan?
Thank you. And again, I apologize for my voice a little wavery due to allergies. So I'm going to say this really slowly. I've thought about this, been here as a new appointed trustee for a short time. I really want us to think about this question before I lead into what I'm going to do next. And what I did as an former English teacher is I write my thoughts out. I do that so that I am clear and it does not show, I hope, some clarity, but also to just have individuals I don't want to omit anything. The question I want to lead with is, we are the 5th largest school district in the nation. How do we not have a separate council for us as trustees? I do not understand that. So here's what I would like to share, my points with my fellow trustees, if you wouldn't let me indulge. The separation of duties between superintendents and school board attorneys is it's crucial for good governance in a school district of our size, the 5th largest in the nation. Why? Prevents conflicts of interest. The superintendent is the chief administrator, responsible for implementing the board's policies and managing the day-to-day operations. The school board attorney advises the board on legal matters and ensures the district complies with educational laws. If the same person held both roles, there could be conflicts. For instance, the superintendent might make a decision that benefits them personally but violates school policy. The attorney in that dual role would be obligated to defend the decision, even if they knew it was wrong. Another point to consider, it does ensure objective legal advice. The board relies on the attorney for unbiased legal guidance. Unbiased. If the superintendent were also the attorney, their advice might be influenced by administrative goals, potentially jeopardizing the board's ability to make sound legal decisions. In other words, if we shared that attorney, there's a conflict. Another point that we need to consider, it provides checks and balances. A healthy school district administration requires checks and balances. The attorney can act as a safeguard, ensuring that the superintendent adheres to legal requirements and board policies. And again, as I mentioned in a previous item, we need to strengthen transparency and accountability. Separation of duties fosters that transparency. The board attorney is directly accountable to the board, not to the board and the superintendent. Promoting open communication and a clear division of responsibilities. So I'm saying, I think we need to consider that these roles need to be separate, and that we need to have and consider outside counsel to prevent conflicts, ensure objective legal advice, provide these checks and balances, and strengthen the transparency. We are going into selecting our new superintendent. I would like us to consider to have an outside counsel to negotiate whatever that contract is going to be. Thank you for listening.
Don't turn it off, because I have a question. Because this is that, and I understand everything that you said, and we actually do have a board attorney that does that. And so maybe I'm misunderstanding. What I wanted was a backup counsel for our board attorney, so that when she is unable to attend, we have that, or unable to answer our phone calls on Fridays, or, you know, that kind of thing, if there's something that is pressing that we need to do. But it wasn't to replace or do anything like that. It was just for as a backup. And so maybe I'm misunderstanding, but we don't share an attorney with the superintendent currently that I know of.
So, Trustee Guzman, forgive me if I misspoke in my notes. They could have been written, like I said, but I am, excuse me again, I am actually I concur with you. I do think we should have that backup. As a new trustee, the things that I think I've been privy to, I really would, I would be much more comfortable and feel that I could be effective in having that outside source and as a backup.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Thank you, Trustee Sparks-Estraffican. To be clear, we currently do have objective legal advice and from our county representative from board counsel, and this discussion specifically is about an RFP process for outside counsel. I'm going to turn it over to, I see Trustee Bustamante Adams, and then the next two members, Trustee Cavazos and Trustee Brooks, are back in the queue. I'm going to turn it over before I go back to them. Give Trustee Williams an opportunity to share comment, and then turn it over to trustee Cavazos and then trustee Brooks. And then I'll provide my particular thoughts on this item as well. And then I don't want to forget, this is an action item, colleagues, so members of the public who would like to speak on this item would need to complete a yellow card. And once we have, we'll collect these cards momentarily and take public comment after trustee Brooks. I think that may be a natural pause for us before we seek action. Okay, trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd just like to first say thank you to Clark County. I don't know if you're listening, but as the county, I just want to appreciate the fact that you do provide us that resource, and I do feel that we have the adequate staffing currently for our board. I feel very confident in that. I also want to thank the trustees for bringing it forward, but I want to stick to the topic. It's about the RFP. And so for me, right now, even though I think the conversation, we would need a backup plan. I don't know if we need an RFP. That seems so extensive. And so I would say that right now, I want to stick to the RFP for the search firm so that we can get our superintendent. That's where I want our energy to be. And that for us, the timing is just wrong right now, for me personally, for this RFP. I think it would be a distraction. Not that it's not valid, because I hear you and I want to let you know that I receive it. But an RFP now for me would just be a distraction for the work that we need to stay focused on. And for that, I would not support something right now.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams, and I appreciate that. I just want you to know that I requested this initial item August 23rd, 2023, when I was told that there was not, that the attorney could choose when they wanted to attend a board meeting.
Thank you for that clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll add an additional clarity to that piece, that in August 2023, I only had two trustees who submitted a request for this particular item. I did not have the entire, I did not have three requests, full requests, and it wasn't until recently that I had the request, and I returned to trustee Guzman to try to put this on the agenda as soon as possible. Okay. Trustee Williams?
Thank you, Madam President. I have so many thoughts, but I'm just going to try and stick to a couple, just so that we don't go off into a tangent. I appreciate how Trustee Guzman actually approached this and the way that she verbalized it, so I'm not going to really talk on that. But to me, I feel like this board gets so distracted so quickly all the time. And it is apparent by just the simple fact that there are other trustees on the board who don't even fully understand what Trustee Guzman was trying to incorporate into this concept. So that's one thing. And the other thing is what I'm going to hit on what Trustee Irene Bustamante Adams said, was that we get distracted. This is not about student outcomes. We are in the middle of an RFP process for a new superintendent. This is very, very, very extensive. And I don't understand how we're going into graduation season, RFP for a superintendent, and oh, by the way, now we need a backup for an attorney who may or may not be there, when that situation has never actually happened to the point where we could not call on the DA's office. Well, because there are other people in that office that can always answer the questions on ethical standards for us and open meeting law standards if our current present attorney is not available. So I just find it very interesting that this consistently comes up. So at that point, I just don't understand why this is I don't think that this is the time to do it. So I'm ready to make a motion, President Garcia Morales, whenever you're ready for that. But I don't think this is the time nor the place to have this conversation, especially in the middle of a superintendent search, and we're gearing up for a new school year.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. I'll return to your motion request, if that's okay, after we hear from the last members in the queue and we hear from public comment. Okay, thank you. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. I agree with you that this has become somewhat muddied as far as on the agenda item and how it was stated. But I do want to point out, because I have just kind of, I went back into my own emails, and the original reason given for this was not that you did not have 3 requests, but that the request was denied to add an item to the September work session because an action was taken during the August 11th meeting of the previous year that met the request. And Trustee Zamora's request was received by you, but I believe you stated that it was not worded correctly, that it was an opinion, not a request. And so with the numerous emails going all the way from August, September, October, several in October, February, March, to finally putting this on the agenda, I did want to point out that the original reason was that this was already taken care of. So I just wanted to point that out. And the other thing that I wanted to state was something that Trustee Zamora had brought up as far as, you know, that not having counsel there sometimes. Part of my training also stated that board counsel, and this was from one of our veteran trustees that I still speak to sometimes, that our board counsel serves as our parliamentarian. And there have been times on the dais that Trustee Zamora was referring to, not necessarily that we stopped dead and we're not able to accomplish anything, although there have been some instances like that, but there were some instances where Robert's Rules of Order were not followed. And because Robert's Rules of Order were not followed, we had a lot of, shall we say, unnecessary contention and things that went in a non-constructive direction, where if we would have had that parliamentarian advice, we could have handled that in a much more constructive way. So I did want to point that out.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. That also piques my curiosity in terms of training that members need to ensure that they also are very familiar with Robert's Rules of Order. That's for a separate discussion. And I have I see Trustee Watson actually has not shared their remarks yet. I'd love to be able to hear from him. And then Trustee Brooks, and then we'll take it over to public comment.
Thank you, Madam President. I was not here in 2021, so this is not anything that I'm familiar with. But based upon Trustee Guzman's request to have a backup, considering that we are a different makeup, we have 7 elected and 4 appointed, and so I just think that that is a different animal, so to speak. And so I think that just having a backup is okay. There's nothing about the county, so it's just a backup. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Watson. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. Just a couple points, and then you can go into public comment. I think our board policy says the vice president serves as our parliamentarian, if I'm not mistaken, not our board attorney. So that's actually a board member who's supposed to keep us in check. And then I do always support additional training, because I think that's a lot of pressure for just one person to have that knowledge. Regarding the backup piece, I also think that, I'm not sure if you covered this, that after this request came, did we reach out to the original people who said that they would provide us legal counsel, and did they agree to do so, and don't we technically already have a backup without an RFP process?
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. That was, Trustee Cavazos alluded to that first original item, first original piece. My effort was in responding to Trustee Cavazos' request was that we had this item in 2021, that we had a list of 4 attorneys that were available, and I wanted to come to a compromise to let her know that we had this access already. The board at the time in 2021 approved a list of 4 law firms that could be used when needed. And I did ask, after that, I did ask council to go back and look into the list and see if those firms would still be available. Those firms are still available. Their fees have changed, however, just like everything else is going up in price. So the most costly firm was willing to give us a retainer for $26,000. That was, 3 years ago. So yes, we currently do have this list.
And then a question to our current counsel from the county. Is it possible if you were to be absent that another person provides backup from the county?
Counsel?
Yes, anyone in my office could cover in my absence.
Okay, so, yeah, it's provided through the county. We already went through this process, this exact process. I feel like it's deja vu because we did all that work. We put out an RFP. We decided as a board a path, and now we're having the same conversation. I feel like we're in a loop. I agree with Trustee Bustamante Adams that we need to stay focused, and the community recognizes that we are very distractible. So we just had a conversation about priorities just like 30 minutes ago, an hour. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, I just asked for your consideration, given that Trustee Zamora, can I put you in the queue here, and then Trustee Zamora, and then public comment? Trustee Zamora, question.
Yes, it was just a quick question. For us to have a backup from the county, who needs to make that call? Or how do we get them?
Whenever I'm going to miss a meeting, I'm in communication with the president and ask if she needs additional legal advice, or so.
Got it. Thank you.
Can we go to public comment, please? Do we have anyone who submitted yellow cards? Thank you. Thank you. All right, Ms. Binder, do you want to come on up, please?
Anna Binder for the record, Madam President, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Larson Mitchell. I was here in 2021, and I've attended more board meetings in the last 5 years than almost every single person in this room and just about every single person listening other than journalists. It feels like a circle because, you're right, Trustee Brooks, we're having the same conversation that we had back in 2021. However, what has happened between 2021 and 2024, we have given our prior superintendent a beautiful write-in on his contract. We fired him. People got bonuses. He resigns. People get bonuses. Our prior board counsel, there were allegations going around that she negotiated even a contract before that with JARA, which raised a lot of questions. So we could get really, really historical about it. I do want to say one of the firms that I previously had an issue with, they did stop representing power to parent. I don't know what kind of loyalty that shows, but for the people who weren't here in 2021, JARA was very good friends with Aaron Phillips. And one of the top firms they were looking to hire was also Power to Parents attorney. And they screamed up and down that there wouldn't be a conflict, but I'm sorry. I don't think so. But I did double check the Secretary of State and they did resign in 2021. I still don't know about loyalty. We also paid JARA's attorney $95,000. Where are we going to get money to pay an extra attorney? I don't know. $250,000 to get rid of JARA, $95,000 to pay JARA's attorney. What, almost $800,000 in executive cabinet raises that have never come before open meeting. The community didn't even get to hear about it, and the only reason we did is because a journalist put in an open meeting or a FOIA. Like, So I've heard the word transparency a lot tonight. There is no transparency. The community wants community meetings, and we've wanted them for years, and I beg for them all the time, and we don't get them. But now all of a sudden, the Council of Great City Schools put it in their plan, so it's a good idea, but we're gonna hold off again. This is why the community is meeting. We're meeting without you because you don't listen. And when people show up here, they leave empty-handed, no matter who goes and talks to them. So what do? They create their own meetings because they don't know what else to do. So we need a lawyer. You guys need a lawyer, especially to hire the new superintendent. If it's for anything, do it for that. Protect us. Or we're gonna be looking at another, it doesn't matter if you're here or not, you're gonna get paid. And this is not like personal, this is a contract. This is money, this is taxpayer money. These are our children. This is our community. The next superintendent should not be walking away rich to leave us if we choose to separate from them. So whether it's our existing one or one that's actually maybe going to protect us, we need another attorney. And the community actually is saying they don't want this board to hire that superintendent, is actually what they're saying.
I'm not sure what that has to do with the RFP process, but I will accept it. And I've not shared my specific remarks, but I do want to provide my comments to my colleagues. And then I'll turn it over, as I shared earlier, to Trustee Williams. I believe that this item is trying to solve for a non-issue of the board. Attendance has been raised as a challenge. However, for 98% of the meetings that were referenced, that hasn't been brought up as a challenge in the past. It just feels like doesn't feel like it is. It appears to me that there's some conflicts that I'm not understanding fully, and for that reason, I'm asking for my colleagues' support to help us focus on this superintendent search, help us focus on the work that we just talked about with respect to community meetings. Like, we have a lot of important work ahead of us, and appreciate my colleagues' commitment to our students in our community, which is why I believe this item specifically is a non-issue. We currently have 4 firms that have been contacted for continued potential service to the board. The backup is the backup counsel has not been an issue for us, and especially since we have a list of 4 firms that exist. Not to mention, and this is along the lines of the RFP process. We just have to look to our friends, our board to the north of us in Douglas County, where they hired a legal counsel, and that has not bode over well for them. The costs have been extraordinary for that community, and unfortunately, that may create all types of liabilities for the board and for the district at large. And I know we're not Douglas County, but we should learn from our peers up north to make sure that we don't follow in those footsteps, especially since the county so graciously supports us with this current attorney counsel. And I'd like to add that there is really, I don't see this being an issue. That's simply what I want to say. Trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam President, for that. I'd just like to point out that legislative sessions are coming up, and if we have things we want to put into the legislative priorities for us, we can always do that, and this can always be one of them. So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to decline this RFP process, and that's it.
I'm going to second that motion, colleagues. However, I want to take note that there are 2 members in the queue, and I would like, out of respect, would like for them to have a moment to share their remarks. And then once these two members are, I believe it's just two members, have provided their comment, I'll ask for the vote. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. A couple of things, and I wanted to address what Ms. Malish said, and that is, she is correct that, you know, the county is able if our board attorney is not available. However, I do wish to share my personal experience as president in 2021, and again, not Ms. Malish's, you know, issue, but I was provided with another assistant DA's name and number, and she never answered my calls. And this was something where Ms. Crone had contacted me, and I actually happened to be on vacation, and I needed legal counsel. I was not here in Las Vegas, and I placed 2 or 3. I can go back and find the name of that DA. I do not know if she's still there, but I do want to point out that she never answered my calls, and I basically had to figure out, with the help of Ms. Crone and just my own resources, to be able to get something done. It had to do with an agenda item that I felt that I needed legal counsel on. The other thing is that, again, having to do with this RFP, to stick to the agenda topic,
Thank you.
that when we decided that we were going to go ahead and go with the county, we had just put in unbelievable number of hours, as Ms. Binder pointed out, on figuring out the rubric, giving input, and basically just putting in a lot of work and hours, and a lot of people giving input on public comment. And then I believe it was Trustee Brooks that brought up that we were able to have the county attorney. I do not remember, without having to go back and look at the minutes, because I do not want to quote incorrectly, I do not remember us saying specifically that we were choosing any one or all 4 of the law firms, that we were going to go to them, and we never have. I mean, there hasn't been, in those 3 years, we have not gone back and consulted, as far as I know, unless I missed something. And I think pretty much, I'm pretty sure that Trustee Brooks and I have been here. We have pretty good attendance records for being here in person. I think one of us would have noticed if we had gone to one of those outside firms. So I just wanted to point that out. And again, Ms. Malish is correct that we would have that resource, but they have not been responsive in the past. Thank you.
Trustee Sparsa-Strophigan?
I just feel, as a new trustee, I want to reiterate the importance, and I know people are saying that the timing is crucial. There is no, and when it was clarified that this initially was asked from, was it August 2023? August 2023, we're April 2024. So I guess there's a lot of questions that I have about why it took so long to get to this space. And that's not something that can be answered right now. But as a new trustee, I really need that protection, and I would really want a backup. We have backups for substitutes. We have backup for administrators. We have backup for school police and other facets of our system. So I think there's nothing wrong with us. If we're obviously not going to explore this at this time, we may in the future. So thank you.
I did say that after Trustee Sparsa, well, I did not say, actually. I said we would take this remarks, but we need to, Trustee Brooks, thank you, Trustee, for reading my mind, Trustee Brooks, for pulling yourself out of the queue. I want to remind our colleagues that there's a motion on the floor. Trustee Williams, can you please restate your motion?
Yes, Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to decline item 2.04, the RFP.
Thank you. And thank you. It's 3.0, no, it is 2.04. The item is 2.04, to reject, to decline 2.04. Thank you. So colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Williams, a second by your president. Please cast your vote. Trustee Williams?
Aye.
Thank you, colleagues. That motion stands 4-3. Colleagues, we're going to move on to item 4.01, the meeting of the upcoming Board of Trustees. Oh, I'm sorry, 3.01. Thank you. I'm ready to move on. This is public comment on items not listed as action items on the agenda. If there's anybody in the audience who would like to provide public comment during this item and has not submitted a yellow card, please do so now. We'll begin with public comment with Ms. Binder, followed by Stephen Phillips.
I'm Anna Binder for the record. Madam President, members of the board, interim superintendent Larson Mitchell. Obviously you guys all know I'm very passionate. And so even the board, just for historical purposes, I participate a lot, as you can tell. And over the years, some people don't like me participating. So they even changed rules in their open meeting so when you get discussion items, you don't get to hear from the community because they don't want to hear from the community. So I did get a little frustrated in my previous public comment because we should have been able to talk about the community meetings. But I just went back and did the math. And if we would have spent all that money on an attorney to protect us, we could have paid for 3,756 hours of an attorney to protect you against JARA. So anyways, that's fun stuff. I don't know, what else did I write down there? I was a little upset that we had a discussion, and I guess a lack of discussion about community meetings. Even the last one that we had, it was a kind of horse and cart. We showed up and it was very much, it wasn't like, hey, community, I'm here for you. It was hey, here's our budget. This is where we spend all of our money. What are your thoughts on that? So I don't really consider that a community meeting. And then the next best thing we got to that was when a few of our trustees went over to the east side of town and participated in a very wonderful community meeting, even though it wasn't like sanctioned by this board. So I do know, and I was dreading today when teachers were getting home and, you know, relaxing to do whatever they do at home, like grade papers and keep working off their contract hours, for them to see the highlight in the RJ today about that last round of raises. Because as we know, even though they got a historic raise with their last contract, it's still not, what do they say, optimal when it comes to nationwide pay. But then to know, you know, inside 2 years that people that aren't in the classroom are getting like upwards of a really large raise because they stood by somebody's side who didn't really want to be in our community anyways. So I'm just now kind of seeing a lot of their messages and what a slap in the face they feel over that. And it sucks. It really sucks. So I'm going to go home and I'm going to go console them tonight because they really deserve that. Thanks.
Stephen Phillips.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Stephen Phillips. Good evening, Interim Superintendent Brenda Larson Mitchell. Stephen Phillips for the record. I wanted to speak to all of you about a community meeting that's taking place on the east side of town at the East Side Community Center located at 1650 South Hollywood Boulevard, Las Vegas, Nevada 89142. This will be a meeting that discusses several issues in CCSD, such as 1, schools failing to inform parents. 2, informing parents what goes on at their children's school. 3, informing parents what schools are hiding. 4, an opportunity for students, parents, and members of the community to speak out in a place and setting free of fear of intimidation and retaliation. I encourage each of you to attend this meeting if you are able. Rumor has it that the mayor will be there, as well as another high-up person in political office in our state. Again, the meeting will be held at 6 p.m. Thursday, May 2nd, tomorrow at 1650 South Hollywood Boulevard, Las Vegas, Nevada 89142. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues. That concludes public comment. We're going to move on to item 4.01, the upcoming meeting of the Board of Trustees, Thursday, May 9th at 5 p.m. here in the boardroom. Okay, colleagues, I'm now seeking a motion to adjourn. Trustee Guzman?
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Bustamante Adams?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Thank you, Trustee. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Guzman, a second by Trustee Bustamante Adams. Please cast your vote. Trustee Williams?
She's texted me that she has connection issues.
Okay. Thank you. All right, colleagues, let's go ahead and close the vote. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 6-0. The time is 5:59 p.m. Thank you. Have a great evening.